winter of 878, a king was hiding in a swamp. His army was scattered. His kingdom, the last free Anglo-Saxon realm in Britain, had all but ceased to exist. And yet within months, this fugitive would shatter the Viking army that had conquered everything else. More than that, he would build a machine of war so cunning that the Vikings would never break his people again. His name was Alfred, and he is the only king in all of English history we still call the Great. To understand the swamp, we have to go back 13 years. In the year 865, something unprecedented landed in England. Not a raiding party after silver and slaves, but an army of conquest, the Anglo-Saxons called it, in terror, the Great Heathen Army. It came to stay. One by one, the ancient English kingdoms fell. Northumbria with its great city of York. East Anglia, whose king, Edmund, was killed for his faith. Then most of Mercia. Of all the kingdoms of the English, only one still stood.
Wessex.
Alfred was never meant to rule. He was the youngest of 5 brothers, a bookish, sickly boy in a world that worshipped warriors. But one by one his brothers died, and in 5071, a year so bloody the chroniclers simply called it the Year of Battles, the crown of Wessex fell to him. He fought the Vikings 9 times that year. He won at Ashdown. He lost far more often. And in the end, like the kings before him, he did the only thing he could. He paid the Vikings to go away. It bought him 5 fragile years of peace. Then, just after Christmas, the peace shattered. In January 878, the Viking leader Guthrum did something no one expected. He attacked in the dead of winter, when armies were supposed to be asleep. He fell on the royal estate of Chippenham in a lightning strike, and Wessex collapsed. The Chronicle says the people submitted to the Vikings, all of them, except King Alfred. With a handful of followers, Alfred vanished into the marshes of Somerset, to a small island of firm ground called Athelney. The King of Wessex was now a hunted outlaw in a bog. This is the moment of England's most famous legend. They say the fugitive king, sheltering unrecognized in a peasant woman's hut, was so lost in thought that he let her cakes burn on the fire, and she scolded the greatest king in England like a careless servant. It is a wonderful story, and we should be honest, it is almost certainly a legend. It appears nowhere in the contemporary record. It surfaces a full century later, in the life of a saint, and was only slipped into Alfred's biography hundreds of years after that. But like all good legends, it carries a truth. A king had fallen about as low as a king can fall. The only way left was up. Look at what Alfred faced. The whole of England swallowed. York, East Anglia, Mercia, all under the Danelaw, the land where Danish law ruled. Only the southwest still held a free English king, and even that was now overrun. From a marsh fort at Athelney, Alfred began something that looked like madness. He started to fight back. And then, in May of 878, Alfred sent out a secret summons. Riders slipped through the occupied countryside carrying a single message: meet the king at Egbert's Stone. No one knew if anyone would come. They came. The men of Somerset, of Wiltshire, of Hampshire, they rode in from every hidden valley, and when they saw that their king was alive, the chronicler says, they rejoiced as though he had returned from the dead. Alfred had an army again. Now he would gamble everything on one battle. They met the Great Heathen Army at a place called Edington. There was no clever maneuver here, just the oldest, most terrible test in the world. 2 walls of shields, locked rim to rim, grinding into each other until one side broke. Alfred's men, the chronicle says, fought with a dense shield wall, and they did not break. The Vikings did. Guthrum's army shattered and fled, and Alfred pursued them all the way to their fortress, killing as they ran. Then he sat down outside the gates and waited. After 2 weeks of starvation, the invincible Vikings begged for terms, and here Alfred did something stranger than winning. He did not slaughter his beaten enemy. The terms of the peace were these: Guthrum would leave Wessex forever, and he would be baptized a Christian. Weeks later, the Viking warlord who had nearly destroyed England knelt in the water, and Alfred himself stood as his godfather. Guthrum took a new English Christian name. It was not soft-heartedness. It was strategy. Alfred was binding his enemy with the strongest rope he had, an oath sworn to the new man's God. Most kings would have stopped there. Alfred was just getting started, because he understood the real secret of Viking power. It was not their courage or their axes, it was their speed. They struck where no army stood, plundered, and were gone before help could come. So Alfred took that weapon away from them. He covered Wessex in a network of fortified towns, burhs, each one ringed by ramparts and ditches and timber walls, each one garrisoned. And he spaced them so cleverly that nowhere in his kingdom was more than a day's march, about 20 miles from a fortress. Think about what that did. Now, wherever the Vikings landed, they hit a wall. They could no longer ride freely and plunder. Every town was a fortress that could hold them until an army arrived. And Alfred fixed the army too. He split the fyrd in two, so that one half was always in the field while the other rested and worked the land. For the first time, Wessex had a standing force that never went home. He even ordered a fleet of new, larger warships built to his own design, though despite the proud legends, calling him the father of the English Navy is a flattery of later ages, not a fact of his own. Slowly, patiently, Alfred turned a desperate resistance into a machine of attrition. The test came in 892. A fresh Viking army, huge and confident, crossed from the continent to finish what Guthrum had started. And it broke itself against Alfred's machine. The burhs held. The armies came when called. The ships harried the longships. For 4 years the Vikings marched and raided and besieged, and won nothing they could keep. In 896 the Great Army simply gave up. It dissolved. Some sailed away. Some settled down to farm the land they could not conquer. The seemingly invincible pagan tide had finally been stopped, not by one hero, but by a system. But here is what truly sets Alfred apart. In the middle of all this, the warrior king sat down to read. Believing his people had fallen into ignorance, he gathered scholars, revived learning, and even translated great Latin books into English with his own hand. He issued a law code to protect the weak. And he left behind a small masterpiece in gold and enamel, inscribed with the words, "Alfred ordered me to be made." A king who could win a battle and translate philosophy. No wonder they called him the Great. Now, a word of honesty, the kind this channel insists on. Almost everything we know about Alfred comes from two sources: a glowing biography written by a bishop in his own service, and a chronicle compiled at his own court. In other words, much of the Alfred we admire is the Alfred he chose to show us. That does not make it false. His burhs are still in the ground. His reforms still echo in English law. But a great king is also a great storyteller about himself. And Alfred, the scholar, knew exactly how history would be written, because he was the one writing it. Alfred never ruled all of England. He called himself, carefully, king of the Anglo-Saxons, for half the island was still Danish. But he had done something more important than conquest. He had saved the one kingdom from which England itself could grow. His son and his fierce daughter would push the burhs north and take back the Danelaw. And his grandson, Athelstan, would stand on a battlefield called Brunanburh as the first king of all England. It began here with a man in a swamp who refused to lose. If this is the kind of history you want, the truth told with pride, then subscribe and walk with us to the day his grandson forged a nation. This is your history too.